Amanda from Pontes Books here with the chapter 13 fun fact for the Prince and the Pauper. Today's fun fact is kind of random, but was something that I thought was interesting and was brought up in the chapter. It has to do with when Miles is trying to repair the clothing for Edward that he has purchased. And while he's doing that, he's trying to thread the needle and gets frustrated at himself because he's not really doing it right. He also pokes himself at one point and makes a comment about how, or kind of the narrator makes a comment about how he does it one way and he should be doing another way. So what I'm looking into today is threading a needle. That's our fun fact for today. So the reference in The Prince and the Pauper, it's kind of a long one because I just kind of wanted to include the whole reference that had it in there. So this first part is Miles commenting out loud to himself, just about basically the price of a needle and the other things that he bought. And then after that, it's the narrator commenting on Miles attempting to thread this needle so that he could sew this clothing. So, would thread were bred, seeing one getteth a year's sufficiency for a farthing, and such a brave big needle without cost, for mere love. Now shall I have the demon's own time to thread it. And so he had. He did as men have always done, and probably always will do, to the end of time, held the needle still, and tried to thrust the thread through the eye, which is the opposite of a woman's way. Time and time again, the thread missed the mark, going sometimes on one side of the needle, sometimes on the other, sometimes doubling up against the shaft. But he was patient, having been through these experiences before when he was soldiering. He succeeded at last and took up the garment that had lain waiting, meantime, across his lap and began his work. So it's talking about him trying to thread this needle, and sometimes, and it says here that he's doing it unsuccessfully, the way that, quote, a man would, which is by holding the needle still and trying to push the thread through. Now, I don't know if any of you have done any threading of needles, but I have certainly done that. Sometimes with success, sometimes with not, but it definitely does kind of take a while to kind of hold it and try and thread it through there. So in this narration, Mark Twain suggests holding the needle still or holding the thread still and trying to put the needle through the thread. So I was able to find a website that kind of actually recommended this method as well. So they called it the 4-step pinch the tip method. So you're basically holding the thread between your thumb and your index fingers, and you're pinching down on the thread between your fingers so that you can just barely see the tip. And then what you're doing is you're taking the eye of the needle and you're moving it onto the thread and then actually pushing it between your fingertips. And then when you open your fingertips, and it said, like, as you get better at this, you kind of get to know the feeling of like the thread, kind of how it feels between your fingers and when it's been threaded. But when you open up your fingers, then the needle will be threaded, ready to go, supposedly. So it breaks it down in a little more detail if you want to look at my references to kind of look at the tips along with that threading the needle. I also found another website that had some other tips that you can use when you're trying to thread a needle. So one is using an eye magnifier, putting white behind the needle, cutting the thread with sharp scissors, cutting the thread at an angle, stiffening the thread with water, saliva, or beeswax. So I know that's a really easy one, just biting or kind of like sucking on the end of the thread so that it's a little firmer. Using a needle threader. So if you've never seen one of those, they usually come sold with, if you're buying a little sewing kit, there's a needle threader that comes with it, and also using tweezers. Also, if you're using a sewing machine, there's usually, I don't remember what it's called, but a part of the machine that is for threading the needle specifically. So those are some other helpful tips. And then I found a video that had another method that wasn't in any of these other tips. So I wanted to just show it because otherwise it's kind of hard to describe. And I'll be honest, I haven't tried it to see if it works. But in the video, they kind of break you down step by step for how to do this method. And it could be one to try as well.
Hello friends, how you all doing? Have you ever been frustrated from a simple task of trying to put the thread through the needle line? In today's video, I'm going to show you a cool trick how to do it easily. All we need for this trick is obviously a needle and a thread. I'm going to use two different needles. One has a big eye, like this. Another one has very tiny eye. So what you want to do is to put thread like this and set the needle eye out. And now watch this, guys. Look at this. The thread is in the needle now. Isn't that great? Now let's see if it's going to work with this needle. It's very tiny eye. Yes. Set like this. Alright, here we go. Work as well. Thread is in the needle again. Isn't it awesome? Obviously, to get the thread through the bigger eye is way easier than the small eye. But if you do it enough times, it's actually get easier. Alright guys, that's pretty much it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and I'll see you next time.
Okay, so that's another method. I don't know what you would call that method, just the kind of, I guess, friction getting the thread through the needle. But it would be another interesting one to try and looks really easy in the video. So this is just a short fun fact for today, but hopefully you found some tips if you've had a hard time threading a needle in the past. Hopefully you learned something. Have a good rest of your day.